Starfield has shown us an absolutely massive range of weaponry, and this gives us a lot to look forward to as some of the players. I'm going to go through some of the information around these weapons and the sheer range of them, and also some of the combat that follows them in Starfield. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with the guns segment. Now there's going to be three different types of firing weapons. There's going to be ballistic guns, energy guns, and electromagnetic guns, or magnetic as I'm going to call them for simplicity's sake. These will more than likely have different levels of effectiveness depending on what we're fighting. So armored enemies versus non-armored enemies. We don't know what effectiveness is going to be against each. We're just going to have to see when the game comes out. We can also guess what weapon types we'll be using in the combat section of the traits. Now, this doesn't show everything and we don't know exactly what each section does, but it's all speculation on this side. We can go through and see that there's a bunch around snipers, revolvers, ballistic weapons, pistols, AR, shotguns, just to name a couple of these. And obviously, depending on what we spec into, is probably going to have better effectiveness and maybe even longer range, especially for something like snipers. Again, we don't fully know exactly what's inside each of these sections. We're just going to have to see when we go into them when the game releases. And in addition to all these different traits that improve the weapons, there are weapon mods that are in there, such as thermal scopes, which is going to be very helpful for us snipers. I'm personally going to be going that way. Different bullet typings, such as explosive rounds, which is going to be very fun to play with. And I doubt all weapons will be modifiable, unfortunately, such as very rare and unique weapons as we've seen in previous Bethesda games. Now, I bet there's going to be a huge range from the magnetic line rifles to the fists. There's going to be a lot of things that we simply haven't seen yet, and there's going to be a lot of different creations that we can see in crafting, which I'm sure we'll be able to craft something even crazier than what we see on the screens, but I'll get into that at another point in the video. Now moving on to the handheld weapons like swords, hammers, and of course your fists. Axe, hammers, knives are all accessible, and I'm sure there's going to be more than I've just named here. It has been stated that you can complete an entire strength build, such as punching people into space. Or so I hope. I've definitely seen a couple of characters go flying in the trailers, so why can't we make them go farther? Food for thought. Now, what in the world are we going to need to do to get to this force ability in the game as well? It's not a ballistic gun, it's not a gun at all, but can you really also call it a handheld weapon? Very interesting, it's very heavily teased and very anticipated from what I can tell online. I can't wait to get my hands on it and learn a bit more about this. Now, I know some people have speculation on how well the melee weapons are going to be, but IGN actually did a playthrough for about an hour, I think it was stated, and they used an axe in their gameplay, and it was extremely fun is what they stated. So that's very great news for guys like me, who's definitely going to get up close and personal from time to time. Thankfully, no matter which way you want to play this game, whether you're more of a long-distance sniper or an up-close and personal katana or axe-wielding player, we'll be having crafting to help move these weapons around how we want them to be. Now, I can't confirm anything around the melee weapons, not yet. If there has been something shown, please let me know down in the comments. But I can say, at least for the guns, it's going to be very in-depth what we can do with them. We'll be able to change stuff like the scope, barrel, it looks like magazines, of course, and probably other more intricate pieces, but we don't know the full capabilities of all the weapons, and if there's going to be certain weapons that can't be changed, such as the extremely rare weapons that I mentioned earlier, or just guns in general that can't be changed a lot, such as revolvers. We don't fully know, obviously. And things that I'm really hoping for is additions to melees, since they weren't really showcased a whole ton. We've seen the little knives, we've seen a small katana, and an axe. I hope there's a lot more than just that, and I also hope that we can craft them to how we want, such as taking a regular single-bladed axe and adding two more blades on either side of it, making it that much more effective and that much more damage. Also, will they be adding jamming effects to guns? If you looked at games like Escape from Tarkov, they have a different effect that sometimes the gun jams and makes it that much more difficult, that much more intensive gameplay. I can't imagine that they're going to implement something like that, especially in a futuristic game, but I think it would be something interesting to really change up the gameplay. And probably my biggest hope is to have a gun or at least some form of weapon that looks extremely alien, not made by human hands, if you know what I mean. Such as maybe a ray gun that shoots some of the beams that we've seen in Call of Duty Zombies, lightsabers, we already have force powers or something similar to it, or maybe even a living weapon that moves and reloads on its own. Something crazy like that I think would be very cool, especially with how wide of a range of areas we're exploring inside of Starfield. Now, of course, weapons have always been a huge part of Bethesda games, and Starfield is going to be no different, especially when you add in some of the actual combat that follows these weapons in the game. It's been shown multiple times that you can get a jetpack to fly around and attack your enemies from above, which is awesome. I love this kind of fresh idea, especially in a Bethesda game where we're mostly on the ground, and it seems to be very fluent, which is definitely a plus. You can also, of course, focus on direct combat, walking up to them with an axe or a shotgun and blowing them away, or slicing them in half. Totally up to you. Variety is king in my opinion, and this game has a lot of it. The combat itself also looks extremely crisp, clean, and immersive, which is what I definitely look for in combat-based games, such as this one. I do expect there to be some bugs, of course. Every game like this is going to have something that happens, especially on the launch weekend, as enemies falling through the ground or ragdolling into the air as a few examples. Overall, the fighting in Starfield looks absolutely amazing. The variety of weapons and crafting opportunities and potential for crafting has opened so many different ways to play this game already, and we haven't got our hands on it. Now, I know that was a lot at once, and I didn't even cover all the finer details. I wanted to make it more overarching so we had a general idea of what we're getting into. But if you guys found this video helpful, please let me know by hitting the like button. Subscribe for some future content, as I'll be exploring a lot of stuff inside Starfield, doing some tips, tricks, and location guides when the game does release for you guys. And I will catch you guys on the next video.